Hey there, welcome to this week's episode of Nail the Numbers, where we talk about all things business wise, number wise, and what you need to know as a business owner to grow your business and to be confident in how you make those financial decisions. My name is Kerry Postal. I am your host and also the founder and CEO of Abacus Business Solutions, where we work with clients to help them to know their numbers, understand their numbers, and trust their numbers as well. So this week we're going to talk about having a reserve fund. So another name for that might be an emergency fund, but either way, no matter what you call it, it's about having a fund set up to one side just in case. So you may have heard Dave Ramsey talk about having an emergency fund, and that's for your personal finances and having that set aside so that in the event of a rainy day and a real emergency, not, oh, I need this new piece of equipment or this new piece of clothing, but a real actual emergency, you have the money set to one side. And that's the same way when it comes to your business as well. So being in the home service business, being in construction, and sometimes being in any industry, it can be unpredictable. COVID, that was a pretty unpredictable event that people weren't anticipating. And that's why we needed things like the PPP loans to help those businesses to get through, be able to pay their staff and help everybody to keep moving through and paying their bills through that time, which is crazy to think that was 4 years ago now. But at that time, so many businesses didn't have a reserve fund and probably don't have a reserve fund now either. So reserve funds aren't just a good thing, a good idea, a good practice to have. It's essential for your survival and your growth because you never know what's going to be around the corner. And so it's like a safety net that, if you're walking along that tightrope, and you've got that safety net of an emergency fund, it just gives you that peace of mind. It just helps you to know, like, okay, in the event something crazy happens, like a pandemic, that you are still good, that you can still make it through and pay your bills, pay your rent, and pay your team. So we're going to look at that today. So a reserve fund is basically a pool of money that you've put aside in the event of an emergency or an unexpected downturn for whatever reason that might be. You're talking to some HVAC subcontractors. It's been a really mild winter, so their business has been down because people haven't been turning their heat on as much as they normally would. And so it's things like that where you're not anticipating something to have an emergency fund, a reserve set aside for those times when that happens. Another thing to look at as well is that if you have a seasonal business, so we have an landscape client who is up in one of the northern states, and she knows that for those 2, 3, 4 months of the year, work is going to be slow. It's too cold to be outside. They can't do what they would normally do. They're not going to be able to be planting and renovating. She knows it's going to be a downtime. So what my client did about this time last year, I think, she started a reserve fund. We actually called it a drip account so that she could drip the money back into the business as needed when it got to this downtime. But she started thinking about it now. And so she and I just had a meeting this morning and we talked about, hey, how's it been? And she said, yep, sales have been down. Her P&L is showing that, she's making a loss, but she hasn't stressed about cash flow. She doesn't like jumping into her drip fund, her emergency fund, but she knows it's there. So she's not worrying about it. She's not stressing about how she's going to make payroll. She was able to pay herself. She was able to pay her team, and she didn't have to be concerned about it. The money was set aside early enough so that when she knew there was going to be a downturn, then she was okay. So that's one of a really big reason to have a reserve fund is that sudden drop in demand. A really mild winter and you don't have people turning up the heat and having issues with their heating where you would normally be going in and fixing all of that. Another reason might be equipment repairs. You may have a piece of equipment that breaks down and it's going to be $4,000 to repair it, which makes sense to repair it rather than paying out another $30,000 for a new one. So it's having a reserve fund for equipment repair as well. So all of these reserve funds, no matter what you call them, what names you call them, it helps the business to continue operating without having to take on debt, without having to use credit cards, without having to jump into a line of credit, or without the owner deciding they can't take pay and having to dig on their own savings. That reserve fund, it's that safety net. It's there to help you and to catch you when times are down. So let's talk about that. Let's just pinpoint those three benefits of having a reserve fund. So it's that financial stability. Just knowing that through those tough times, your business is going to be able to stay afloat. So it's important to figure out what does that look like for you. How much do you need to have set aside? So it means that way, when there is a downturn, whatever it might be, that tough time you're going through, you're not having to worry about building it. Putting everything onto a credit card, pulling money from your personal account. It's there to help you through. The second one is flexibility. When you have that reserve fund, it helps you to make decisions, without the immediate financial constraint of like, okay, like this piece of equipment's got to be repaired. What do we do? Do we take on debt and buy a new one, or do we have $4,000 here to go repair it? What does it mean? And then maybe an opportunity comes along. This client I was just talking about this morning, she had the opportunity to purchase around $10,000 worth of equipment at a really, really great price. It was one of those opportunities too good to miss. She had that money set aside in reserves for equipment, and she was able to go and buy that equipment. She said if it hadn't been for her implementing this system, then she wouldn't have been able to do that. She would have had to have just said, nope, sorry, don't have the cash, or get into debt, put it on a credit card, whatever the options were. But she didn't have to do that. She had the reserves. She was able to go buy that equipment and save a lot of money without having to pay full price for it. So it's different things as well like that it helps you as a business owner. And third, peace of mind. And I know that's such an overused phrase, and I get it, but that peace of mind, knowing you've got that reserve fund, like my client this morning, she did not worry about this winter about having to use her reserve fund. She knew it was there if she needed. She didn't have to worry about cash flow. She didn't have to worry about not having enough money to pay her bills. She knew it was going to be okay. Did she like him to dig into it? Of course not. Nobody does. But she didn't have to worry about making payroll. She didn't have to worry about how was she going to pay the bills. The money was there, and she's been able to continue. So let's talk about 5 different steps to build your reserve fund. So the first one thing you want to do is you want to assess your financial situation. You want to understand your cash flow. Knowing what comes in, what's due to go out is the first step. So what does that look like? Do you have a spreadsheet, or you're using something, one of the cash flow systems in QuickBooks to actually monitor that movement of cash in and out of your business? Do you know when you have payments coming in from customers? Do you know when you have those bills coming out? Can you see everything in advance of what's going on? And that's going to help you to be able to understand, how much of a reserve fund do you need? So for example, if you want to have a 3-month emergency fund that covers all those fixed overhead costs that you have to pay regardless of how much business you do, how much is that? Is that 10,000? Is that 20,000? What is that number? So that's something that, we're doing at Abacus at the moment. We're building a 3-month reserve fund. So that way, in the event something happens, I don't need a PPP loan in the future. I don't need anything like that to help me going through this. Anything that comes up, my business will be able to survive for 3 months and not have an issue. So that's something that I encourage businesses to do as well. It also helps you that when you look at your numbers like that, it helps you to identify those areas where you can cut costs. What can you do to reduce expenses? Because a lot of the time, it's really easy to overspend and not realize it. And so if you're able to look at that on a regular basis, that also helps. So then you want to set a goal, determine like how much do you want or need in that reserve fund. So like we talked about, 3 months, if you can do 6 months of operating expenses, then that would be great. That number is going to differ from company to company. So don't, say, well, she's got, this much, I need this much. It's whatever your business needs, and that number is going to be unique to you. So determine what that is, how much do you need to put in there, and then start small and just build it up. Don't feel like, okay, you've got to be throwing thousands and thousands of dollars at this account. My client spent the year building up her reserve fund, for the winter time, and it worked perfectly. And she was not throwing thousands of dollars in there at a time. If she had a big payment come in, then maybe she would be able to, put more money into it that month. But just, start small and build it up, and just start, each month or each time you get payments coming in, determine what percentage of that money you can move into a reserve account. And it will just continue to grow over time. Just don't touch it for anything else. And then you want to monitor it and you want to adjust it. So once you've set this up, it's not just a case that you just leave it in, set in stone and it's done. You're going to regularly review this and adjust your contributions based on how your business is performing. So for example, like we said, if you have a big job come in and you're able to put 5,000 straight to that reserve fund because of this big job, then do that. That's a great way to do that. But as your business grows, you add more team members, maybe you take on more operating expenses on a month-to-month basis, then that goal may have to be increased over time. So it's something you monitor over time. It's not just a case of throw a number at it and that's it, you're good to go. It's something you're going to monitor. And then the fifth thing is keep it accessible. The money should not be tied up in, in a short-term investment or a savings account that you can't get to very often. You need to be able to, withdraw that money without significant penalties when and as you need it. So those are your 5 steps. So you need to assess your financial situation, set your goal, start small and build up, monitor and adjust, and then keep it accessible. So those 5 steps will help you to build your reserve fund. So it's more than a financial tool. So, hopefully you can see that it's the cornerstone of a really healthy business. It's something that gives you, the business owner, a peace of mind, and it's going to help you to really just know that you can get through any circumstance. And, in the event of whatever comes up again, if you can't make any revenue for a month, but you still got to pay your rent and still pay your team, you'll be able to do that because you'll have that reserve fund to one side. And it's not just an emergency fund that you can build a reserve fund for as well. There's lots of different areas. So new equipment, new vehicles, if you're wanting to add a crew, then start, determine, okay, right, I need this much for a truck, I need this much for a trailer, I need this much for equipment. You start putting those numbers together and start building those accounts up. And like I said, you may not need another crew for another year, 18 months, but that's okay. Start thinking about it now and put money aside. So when you get to that point, you don't have to take on a huge amount of debt and you can just be ready for it. And the same thing, with maybe equipment in the office. If you've got, an admin team that have computers, start saving for new equipment for that. We know these PCs don't last forever. And so just anything like that where you can feel that you need to have a reserve fund of some kind, then start building that up. So, here at Abacus, I think I'm up to 15 bank accounts. And there's several reserve funds in there, and they all have their different name as to what the money is categorized for. And like I said in the past, every dollar in my business has a purpose. It's all been designated. Okay, you're to be spent on this, you're to be spent on that, and it goes into its own account. And if you're looking for a bank like that, then reach out to me and I can make a recommendation for you where there's no monthly fees. And it just makes it really easy to see where all your money is and where it's been allocated as well. And then it's easy to do transfers also. So hopefully that helped you. So a reserve fund is a really important thing to have in your business. Again, start small. Do not feel that you have to just go all at it in one go. Build it up smallly and let it grow. Okay, so thanks for watching today. If you've been watching me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify, then thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to give us a follow and subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. And just remember, your business is the most important thing to you, and knowing your numbers is critical to your success as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.